Okay, so let's start by just getting into a meditation position, whatever's comfortable for you. Mainly, having an upright spine. That's the most important part to keep our mind alert and clear. Oh, animation slideshow. 1 second. Settle. Home beginning. Excuse me, just getting this ready as well. Hey. So again, just let's spend a few minutes just settling our mind into our awareness into our breath. Just trying to combine our awareness with our breath for a few minutes, being with that process of inhalation and exhalation. Either we can use the point at the tip of the nostrils, just placing our awareness there like a post, or at the level of the abdomen, just breathing in and out and being aware of the rising and falling of the abdomen as the breath goes in and out. Just trying to bring our awareness, our consciousness, just sort of one with that process as much as possible to calm and settle the mind. And then in that place, with the mind more settled, just see if we can formulate our motivation for the class in your own mind, your own heart. So in the light of this module being on death and rebirth, let's just take a moment to formulate in our mind, the importance of remembering death, not just here and there, but on a daily basis. And ideally, as we're going to see as we do this class this evening, on a momentary basis. So last week we tried to look at some of the reasoning and logic to bring death closer to our mind, with the first truth that death is going to be definite in our life. One of the analogies we used is like our life is like a waterfall. Birth is like when the water comes off the precipice at the top. And moment by moment, second by second, we're getting closer and closer to the bottom when the water falls, to hit the water at the bottom, which signifies death, Each moment, just like the waterfall, we're getting closer and closer to the moment where we reach the death time. Our life is like that. We're not just getting closer, but just like the velocity, the speed of the water, it's like our life is getting more quickly closer to the time of death. See if you can just take a moment with that analogy, thinking about our life being like this waterfall. We're born into this world, we come off the precipice, and then momentarily, moment by moment, second by second, we're kind of going down and reaching the water at the bottom. And it's, for most of us who are getting older, we feel that life's getting faster. This happens because, we have a limited lifespan. So with each moment, with each breath, that much of our life disappears, that much our life gets shorter. Again, another analogy is the piece of string, Imagine there's a piece of string that a child holds, and then it's only got a certain length, and each time we sort of pull the string, that much of your life, we're getting the string's getting shorter, that much of your life is getting shorter. Again, moment by moment, breath by breath. So another analogy can be when we look at, some of us might have a calendar. In the past, we used to have these calendars in the wall, and then we'd maybe cross off a day. One meditation you can do is like, if you have one of these calendars and every day you cross off a day, and every time you cross off the day, when it's finished, you think, I'm that much closer to death. That's one day less I have in this life. We're definitely going to reach the bottom, just like the water in the waterfall. We're going to reach the bottom where the water hits the main body of water, and that's us going into the death time. That's when we leave the body. Another way of thinking is our body's a bit like a guest house. We come into this body, our consciousness enters this body at the time of birth, conception. And it's just for a limited period of time. It's like a guest house. We come in, enter this body that goes through death and decay, old age, sickness, and then we leave again. So we just inhabit this body for a certain period of time. Because we're born into samsara. We're born into a realm where everything's impermanent and it's subject to death and decay. Our body, our life, our enjoyments, friends, family, whatever we own, everything goes through this process of birth and decay. Within its very nature is the nature of death, the nature of ending, destruction. Just like our body and our life. So after these contemplations, if we get any sense at all, the kind of shortness of our life, the definite time of death that we're definitely going to take, gets closer to the heart or closer to the chest, what we try to feel or think is that I have to practice Dharma, I have to try my best to overcome the delusions that cause this cycle of birth and death. Any sickness that has cause and conditions, any disease has cause and conditions. So how fortunate we are that we have the medicine available, the medicine of the Dharma, the medicine of these teachings, qualified teachers, and we have this faith and interest to develop our mind. So we're so fortunate that we can practice the Dharma properly. We can use death, these meditations on death, especially that's definite, to inspire our mind to practice Dharma, to motivate us to make our actions meaningful, virtuous. That's the purpose of the meditation, bringing death closer, more aware, so that we understand the purpose of our life, is to practice virtue, practice the cause and conditions to gradually liberate ourselves of this, wheel of life, this cycle of birth and death. It's possible. We see that in example of great masters of the past, or spiritual teachers. They have these abilities to not experience ordinary death, to experience a kind of exalted, joyful state of mind. So it's possible for us. So let's motivate that by listening to the teachings, reflecting, meditating, not just myself, but all sentient beings, all my friends, my family, people I really care for, those I don't know, but just like me, every living being we meet in this world, apart from the rare few, who are maybe bodhisattvas in disguise, Buddhas in disguise, but the majority, 99.999%, are like me, going to experience death and future suffering, future samsara. So may this teaching be the cause for me to just not just liberate myself and develop these great minds of bodhicitta by using death as a motivator, as a catalyst to practice, but also for all sentient beings, for me to also, as I liberate myself, develop myself, to be able to benefit and develop all sentient beings on the path to enlightenment. That's really the main goal, Once we are free, we are liberated, we're healthy, out of death and rebirth, then we can liberate others. We're fully qualified. So Lama Zopa Rinpoche always used to say, we always try to meditate by hearing, listening, reflecting on the teachings. Maybe we develop these inner qualities as quickly as possible so we can benefit all sentient beings and guide them in the same way, with these deeper inner qualities. So we're just going to start with the refuge prayer today, just to remind us that, as we study, reflect and meditate in the teachings, we need to take refuge, in the guides, masters, beings who have accomplished the qualities, in the teachings like the medicine, and the Sangha, the spiritual community that can support encourage, inspire us on the path. So just affirming that refuge, and as we affirm it, just feel that Guru Chenrezig is with us in the space before us. All sentient beings are around us. We're all seeking refuge together from the cycle of birth and death, seeking refuge to develop and deepen our understanding of death and the process of death, so that it can, as I say, be this catalyst, this motivator out of samsara. We just can imagine light and nectar coming and just blessing us and all sentient beings as we recite refuge 3 times together. Sangye chodan sogi chognamla chanchu bardu dani kyapsuchi dagi chinso gebe sonam ye rola penjir sangye druparshu sangye chodan sogi chognamla chanchu bardu dani kyapsuchi Tagi chinso gebe sonam ye drola penjir sange druparshog. I take refuge until I'm enlightened in the Buddha, the Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. By my merits of generosity and so forth, may I become a Buddha to benefit transmigratory beings. Okay, so let me just take a moment to share the PowerPoint. Okay, great. So as we did in the meditation, the purpose of that meditation a little bit was just to try and kind of give us a taste again of how we're supposed to meditate a little bit when we're thinking about death being definite in our lives. And as I say, there's wonderful meditations in Rinpoche's Lamrim book, the Lamrim book, that 365 days motivations or meditations that we can do to, bring us through the whole path, the whole Lamrim path. So there's about at least 20 on death and rebirth, and especially quite a few on the 9 points of death. Especially, death is definite. So the first 3 points that cover the first truth that death is definite. That we covered last week. So just recapping. So session 4, as Joan says here, Joan Halifax, it's a bit like when we meditate in death is definite, it's like a weather report warning us of a storm in our future. The warning cannot be predicted exactly when or how the storm will hit, but it does tell us that the storm is inevitable. So again, these days we can get really clear predictions of the weather. So it's like that when we're meditating, we're trying to really get a clear prediction in our mind. We're trying to make very clear in our mind that the storm of death is coming. Because as I say, due to the power of sort of our own delusions, this sense of permanence that clings to our mind, we don't feel a lot of the time, we don't think about death as definite unless we apply some of the meditations or unless we have something very prevalent happening in our lives in terms of our own health, something maybe we've been to the doctor and we've got some kind of diagnosis for the doctor. But if outside of that, we may not be thinking day to day about our death, So when we do these meditations, it's kind of like this, we're predicting for ourselves, we're really trying to get a strong sense that that storm of death is coming, it's close. And what we do is we look at all the cause and conditions and reasoning, especially the 3 reasonings here, that bring that thought of death closer to us. As I went over last week, because death will definitely come and it cannot be avoided. So it sounds kind of obvious, but again, if we don't think more deeply about that, we just tend to kind of go on with our lives, with this kind of sense of attachment, think affairs of this life looking more important than maybe more spiritual affairs. We get caught up with a sense of permanence, this sense of attachment in the general affairs of this life. So again, the first one we think about here, just roughly as we go over again, that why death will definitely come, because there's no one in this human realm, not even the Buddhas, not our gurus. I mean, Lama Zopa Rinpoche was so bright and powerful for me, you know, but he still manifested passing away. The great kings and the sages of the past, the great presidents. So how we try and bring this close is we think about especially powerful people who feel almost invincible, but yet they even passed away, you know, so never mind me. So that's kind of how you use that first reasoning there. You think about powerful people who almost feel like they're never going to die, but yet they even passed away. So there's no question I'm going to pass away. The second reasoning is because our lifespan cannot be extended and diminishes unceasingly. So again, like these analogies I was trying to use in the meditation, you know, and I find this one of the most powerful is using these analogies. Like Lama Zopa Rinpoche also suggested to use a clock. I was almost going to put a clock up for the meditation. I Googled a clock, a video, a clock, but they were all really loud. Because he suggests sitting with a clock, you know, maybe for half an hour or an hour, and each time it ticks by, you feel like that tick, you're getting closer to death, you know, which is true, because every minute, every moment, every step, every bite of delicious food, that much our life is diminishing, and that much closer we're getting to death. So it's quite intense doing these meditations, but this is kind of how we try and convince our mind, you know, because it doesn't feel convinced a lot of the time, you know, it doesn't think about it. We're trying to convince and tell our mind, feed our mind with this information, this logic, you know, because our normal sense is, if we really check up, that we have this feeling that we're going to sort of live forever. So this is just trying to starting to chip away at that sense of permanence. All these are chipping away at that sense of permanence and just bringing it, as like this lady here, as we're going to show in the next diagram, it's bringing the sense of death a bit closer to your chest. It might not go deep, deep into the heart, but we want to get it closer to your skin, not somewhere far out there, beyond, separate from me, not going to be really my experience. And of course, as some of us here, we're getting older, we do start to feel it more. But even then, they say up to the last moment of your day, before you die, maybe, but we still have this feeling that we're going to live longer. If we haven't conquered that and worked with that through these types of meditations and really brought the sense of death closer to our heart, closer to our life experience. I mean, there was one lady about a few months ago, a friend asked me to come and do some prayers for her because she was passing away. She had cancer and she had some, you know, they thought it was probably just going to be a week or two. And even I think she had done some Buddhist practice in her life. And she, even though her friend, you know, her family around her, they all knew the diagnosis, she did too. It's not like the doctors hadn't said to her, but she was still talking about when she would recover and what she was going to do. So I mean, I'm not being judgmental, but it's kind of this, you know, sometimes there's this thing we don't want to accept, you know, it's quite hard. But if we've done these types of meditations and this made our mind familiar already, then we're going to be able to accept, you know, when we get that diagnosis for the doctor or whatever it is, if we get one, you know, we may not, we might die completely unexpectedly and quickly, we just don't know, you know. So either way, this is these are that middle one's very juicy for starting to get this kind of can bring up a bit of fear, you know. Sometimes a little bit of anxiety, and some way that's okay, you know, because what it's really chipping at is our sense of concreteness, you know. We don't want to feel like we've only got a short amount of time, but we do kind of need to feel that in the light of our spiritual practice and making our life and momentarily each day as meaningful as possible. So we don't, as Lama Zopa Rinpoche would all say, we don't cheat ourselves at the death time. We feel like we've done our best. You know, this life, we are level of mind. And again, that has different levels of what we feel our best is, you know, but either way, we feel we have a level of comfort at the death time because you know, we're just well prepared, you know, we've thought about it well, we've prepared for it well. So again, the third reason is because even when we are alive, there's not a lot of time to practice. So again, that's that kind of thing. Well, the first 25, 30 years of our life, we might not have met the Dharma. We didn't think about death very much, you know. Some of us might have done, you know, but if we really check up, first part of our life probably was quite involved with, mostly this life's affairs, you know. Middle part of the life, you know, maybe we have to make a career, we have children, and of course within that we can be creating good karma. It's not that we're not. But in terms of being sort of more deeply prepared for death, maybe we're not doing that there. And then last part of your life, we don't know how we're going to be if we live that long, you know. Again, many people, they reach retirement. As mentioned my grandfather last week, not that he was going to use his retirement to practice Dharma, but, you know, he reached retirement age, he and my stepfather, and died at 65, you know. So we don't know. Some of us have got beyond that age already, some else haven't. So it's kind of like not thinking we've got a lot of time to practice, because even through the day, gosh, myself included, I mean, a lot can waste a lot of time. And I do notice if I think about death better in the morning, I do tend to grasp, you know, I'm just more mindful in my mind, my mindset. I'm more mindful of not getting upset and angry at small things. I'm more mindful of maybe doing more practice that day, you know, more reading, practice, study, watching teachings, whatever, if I think about death in the morning. So I think some of you may already be doing that, you know, so that's wonderful. So these three kind of bring this kind of, as this lady's doing in the next image, she's, you know, you know, it's kind of like, I feel like this first one, this first root reason for death, you know, bringing death closer to us, that death is definite. It's not quite as tricky and gnarly as the next one two we're going on to this class, but it's almost like if you you go to the doctor, you know, and we can sort of visualize this, and the doctors, you know, you've maybe had some ongoing pain or discomfort and you've maybe been putting off going to the doctor, but it gets to this point where you're like, I need to go and get it checked, it could be something more serious. Then you go to the doctor and then they do all these tests and then they discover that you've got something, you know, life-threatening, and they've given you like maybe a year to live. You know, so I think somehow we can get a sense of that if we go to the doctor. You can actually do that as a meditation. You visualize. That's a bit more comfortable than you get, you know, some other kind of diagnosis, which we'll go into with the next two reflections on death. But with death is definite, it's almost like it brings it that much closer, similar to, I think, if you go to the doctor and they say, well, you've got about a year to go. So it's like, whoa, okay, it's like a wake-up call. I've got a year, I've got to wake up. So it's still a bit scary, it's still a bit intense, but it does motivate our life in, I think, in quite a different way, yeah. It would pretty much change our life around. So getting a sense of that topic is a little bit like that kind of feeling when you go in, that kind of diagnosis you might get. So next, so there's, you know, as I say, this is a 9-point death meditation. So the second route, and there's 3 routes, and each route has 3 points, you know, logic, reasons, you know, ways we have to think and contemplate and meditate in our mind to get clear on that route 1, this one being the time of death is indefinite. So the 3 are because the lifespan in this world is indefinite, because the causes of death are very many and the causes of life are few, and because the time of death is uncertain due to the fragility of the body. So the second decision is, I must practice now. So sorry, just to be clear on the first decision, when we contemplate death as definite, the first decision you make is, oh, I need to practice. You know, I need to prepare my mind, even in light of, you know, you think you have a year to live, that diagnosis, there would be some sense of spirituality for most of us becoming important, some sense of starting to release or let go, and some openness in the mind, you know, about what's important in the next year, what's important. So this one, though, this contemplation, it makes it more, so death isn't just maybe on a chest level, it's more in a, it's starting to go sort of more deeply into our being, you know, it's touching us on a deeper level, bit more vulnerable level, when we think that death is indefinite. We don't know when the time is, you know. So as Lam Kappa says, this one, of course, the more difficult one, is more important, because it really shifts our mind. And you can see that, you know, when something is unpredictable, the timing we don't know, it brings up, it's not so easy, but also we don't know. So we have to be even like more prepared somehow, you know. So it really, as I say, that one, it kind of really shifts our mind into, you know, practice gear in a big way. And this is the one that, you know, the great meditators, the great masters of the past, they really mastered that one, you know, the unpredictable time of death, you know, we're not only just going to happen, but, you know, it could happen at any time. So it's kind of a little bit chilling, you know. And it's dealing very much with this kind of sense of sudden changeability. It's like, okay, but the storm is coming. Okay, I've got that, but then it could happen at any moment. Oh my God, that's more terrifying, you know? So it does have a little bit of this scary quality. And again, it's like, so we have this sense in our life, you know, we want to be in control of this or that or the next thing. So we tend to generate control a lot of the time with being in control of external affairs for your life. But in the light of the meditation and death, and especially its unpredictable timing, uncertain timing, it's like, wow, where does the control go? It's like we don't know what we can't really control that, you know. So, and it's true, we really can't right now, you know. The only thing we can do at a basic level is right now try and keep our mind in a good space and you know, as much as possible. So that's the first level of spiritual practice in the light of death being unpredictable, is to keep our mind in a good space, practice virtue, be a good person, try and be as kind and compassionate as we can, because that props us in or drives us into a good future rebirth. And again, that's the first level of spiritual happiness that we're trying to develop, right? On the first level of happiness is at least to, if we love ourselves, if we care for ourselves, to bring our mind into a good future rebirth. And this kind of, you know, from a Buddhist perspective, we have continuity of consciousness. So we want to take care of that, you know. Ideally, this life, we want to release as much mental baggage as possible, you know. That's really the main purpose, you know. If that can bring us into a state of, you know, even understanding emptiness more, even you know, developing more compassion, kindness, softening up our mind. That's like getting into the second level of teaching, the second level of happiness, at least preparing perhaps our mind for realizations. And of course, the higher level is, you know, like these great masters who have already, they develop through this meditation, it really causes them to really, really pin down what's important and really focus day and night on practice and meditation. So this is the key one that really kind of brings the mind into gear, you know. It's like, this is what I have to do. This is the purpose of my life. Whether it's on the first or second or third level of spiritual wish and aspiration that we have. So again, the three reasonings we try to use to try and get our mind into that place of feeling that our life, you know, our lifespan's indefinite, you know, we really don't know. That's really true. Is just thinking about, you know, some of this, because the lifespan in this world is indefinite, you know, some of the many people you see in the morning. So we contemplate this, you know, in our lives so far. Some of the people we see in the morning will not see in the evening. Some of the many people you will see in the evening, you will not see in the morning. So as I wonder, has that happened to anyone? Where, you know, I'm sure, well, when we get to the end of these three topics, I just wanted to see, you know, like how much is maybe this has happened in our life, you know, especially like we saw someone with the expectation that we were going to see them the next day or the next week or the next month. And then it didn't happen, you know, they passed away. Most likely unexpectedly. So again, according to Buddhist cosmology, you know, this world system that we're in, this continent that we're in, this world system, you know, it goes through these eons and kalpas, kind of periods coming into existence, creation, abiding, decaying, and then just going into a period of sort of non-abiding at all. You know, and this happens over thousands and thousands and thousands of years. So so actually, and you know, even in this world system, there are periods of time when the lifespan can be, you know, when we first come in as human beings, I mean, first enter in this world as human beings, our lifespan can last thousands of years. But when we read over Buddhist cosmology, because of the degeneration of our karma and delusions, the lifespan slowly degenerates, you know. So right now we're in a period when the Buddhas normally appear is when we're in a period of lifespans generally 100 years. So that's the kind of time span we're in at the moment in terms of looking at the, you know, thousands and thousands and billions and eons of existence in this world system. We're in this period, which still lasts for some thousands of years, where our lifespan's about 100 years. But even then, that's not fixed, you know. As I say, people die at all, you know, we see people dying at all different ages. So again, many people, it's not just unfixed, but you know, many people, this kind of sense that it can happen at any time. Many people start a meal before they finish. Many people are born but die before reaching adulthood. Many people go out by car but die before returning home. I mean, the car's actually driving's pretty dangerous, actually. I don't know how many thousands, millions of deaths happen in cars. You know, I think it's more dangerous than more people die through car accidents than they do flying. Many people buy new clothes but die before they wear them. So again, we try and think about these and maybe bring to mind people we know or things we've heard on the news with people dying these kind of sudden, unexpected ways, unusual ways, and we try and bring them to mind to get this sense that you know, that death, it's not fixed on this planet. There's no fixed time, you know. So the other thing that happened, for example, with myself, was my aunt, maybe I mentioned this last week, I can't remember. My aunt was diagnosed with cancer around about maybe the age of 50. So this is what helps me. I try to think about, you know, we have to think, it has to be a personal experience for us with people around us or things we've read about or watched on the news. But my aunt was diagnosed with cancer. So for around about the age of, I think, mid-40s. So in our life, from all the side of the family, everybody felt she was dying because she had cancer. Now, she recovered. She got treatment. I think she had treatment, maybe 5, 6 treatments. And each time the treatment worked, and she lived for, you know, another couple of years, and she got another treatment. So she ended up living through about 5 rounds of chemo, and she lived about an extra 15 years. So she died around her I think, early to mid-60s. And but in the family, from the family viewpoint, we all thought that she was the one that was dying because she'd been diagnosed with something. So we always also tend to have this feeling that because this person's diagnosed with something, they're the one dying. We don't sort of apply it necessarily to us. And so, and also what happened in that scenario was our partner, or husband, sorry, he was, you know, he was well for many, many years with her, and she was the one that was sick, and he was caring for, you know, he was the main caregiver. Well, he was diagnosed with cancer, the one that you get through this, you know, from the sun, the skin cancer, and he died like really quickly, and he died before her. So I think for the family, it was this just like major turnaround of she's the one dying, but yet he was diagnosed very in a short space of time and died really, really quickly. So again, it can, you know, it can turn around like that. Those who we think are dying, but all of a sudden it's someone else who we think is very healthy and they die like very suddenly. So the other thing as well, it's like, you know, sometimes we think that, you know, we have this kind of logic in our mind going on that have enough money to pay for doctors and hospitals, and you know, so I'll sort of be okay. You know, I have health insurance, I have this insurance or that insurance. So there's a feeling that I know that we don't think it protects us for death, but there's a sense that it kind of I don't know, it maybe blankets us a little bit from the unexpected because we have all these things, you know. But it's not necessarily the case. You know, again, my grandmother, you know, she went into hospital. I mean, again, she was older, but she went into hospital and she was sick with something, and she got something else in hospital that was the cause of her death. She got another bacteria, and that was what caused her to die. So it wasn't necessarily that the hospital and the medication helped her, because actually that ended up, you know, that environment ended up being the cause of her death. So again, it can just come in all different ways and in all unexpected ways. So again, using these kind of examples just to kind of try to feel that, there's nothing really that can protect us outside. Sometimes it's true, some things can help prolong life, but it's not going to save us for the time at the time of death completely. We will still have to face that. There was also the story of who was the man who passed, who had, I think he had a liver cancer, who used to, he developed Apple. Anyone, what was his name again?
Steve Jobs?
Yeah, Steve Jobs. Now, he died quite young, yeah?
Yes.
He was in his mid-50s. So again, he had all the wealth, all the power, all this great genius. And look, he passed away really young, So it's just, we just don't know, there's no real uncertainty. There's nothing. I think the idea is here that there's nothing kind of outside of us that can sort of protect us for this time of death, and it's like this sense that we can be here one minute and not the next, and trying to apply that to people we know about in our life, that's happened to already. So the next reasoning is because the causes of death are very many and the causes of a life are very few. So again, even things like food, medicine, as I say in the example of my grandmother, she went in the hospital and then because of other conditions there, she passed away. That was the main cause of her death. Food, there's many, even though it's the cause of life, it can be the cause of death. Even the Buddha actually passed away from food poisoning, although he had complete control of that and he knew what was happening, but nonetheless, he manifested passing away from some food, contaminated food. So again, externally, so from inside, there's again many disease. I think there's over 200 types of cancers. I looked it up online. There's over 30 types of heart problems, and again, there's subcategories of those as well. There's so many types of respiratory problems and infections. I mean, look what happened during COVID. That came completely unexpectedly and took away so many people unexpectedly. So, I mean, these kind of things can just come like a bomb, and really, really, harm many, many people. So again, we try to think about, use this meditation, not to think about so much what's prolonging our life, but and again, many of the things that we think sustain our life, like house, clothing, shelter, maybe not clothing, but house and shelter, food, medicines, they can also turn against us. And thinking about examples in our life when that's happened, or in other people's lives when it's happened, especially now when we see so much harm going on in the world with the elements. Unfortunately, people, in North Carolina, not just, in Nepal, experiencing incredible floods, So what they thought was protecting them, for many of them, it ended up being, one of the conditions of their death, their house, the earth that you walk on, the water, all these things that often help us become the cause of your death, So there's so many life-threatening things that are around that we don't really bring to mind. And again, it's a bit scary going there, but it's to try and get a sense of this fragility of life instead of feeling like very strong and solid and permanent, to try and connect with the impermanent nature of everything that's going on around us, externally and internally. So again, we maintain our life force in the midst of thousands of conditions that threaten death. Our life force abides like a candle flame in the breeze. The candle flame of our life is easily extinguished by the winds of death that blow from all directions. Just checking up. So yeah, it's just, again, trying to feel that, the things that we just have this kind of, we kind of almost rely or trust, like Lama Tsongkhapa is saying here, seeking samsaric pleasures is the door to all suffering. They are uncertain and cannot be relied upon. So it's everything really in our life that we rely upon external to us. It's completely uncertain. We don't know for sure that it's necessary, none of it can really protect us for the time of death, you know, not food, not clothing, not shelter, the things we kind of almost take refuge on for our life sustenance. And it doesn't mean that we don't drink, we don't eat, we don't have a nice place to live, but just being aware that within them, they're all in the nature of disintegration. And within that, none of it can be relied upon, certainly to protect us from death. You know, they're not a reliable refuge for us. So in that light, there's no reason to kind of cling to them. This whole meditation, especially on death is definite. So death is definite, starts to kind of release the mindy attachment. That's the idea to this life. Death is indefinite, definitely rocks that boat even more, you know, that solidity even more. Because then we start to feel that actually there's so much indefiniteness in our life, including our body, our life, our enjoyments, our family, our friends. There's nothing really we can cling on to that's going to help us at the time of death, apart from our practice, you know, apart from our spiritual the level of our spiritual, our mind, you know, the quality of our spiritual practice. So that's, again, we always come back to that conclusion. It's letting go of the clinging, unrealistic expectations that people, friends, family can bring. It doesn't mean that we don't care and love for others, but checking unrealistic expectations, checking our attachment to them, recognizing that it's all transitory, you know. So what we need to rely on at the death time is our mental state. What is our quality of mind at the death time? That's what we come back to all the time with these reflections. So the last one in these three roots is because the time of death is uncertain due to the fragility of the body. So again, really, we touched on that before. All these three kind of overlap with each other in a sense. Much harm can harm one's, oh, sorry, I don't know what happened there. That's not quite right. Much can harm one's lifespan. I think that's it. It is even more impermanent than bubbles on the water blown by the wind. How amazing that we wake up breathing after we have gone to sleep. There's another verse that Lama Tsongkhapa uses in the Foundational Good Qualities. This life is impermanent as a water bubble. That kind of analogy, that sense is what we're trying to get to, you know, trying to really break down this. Again, we feel our body's quite solid and concrete, but it's actually, you know, made up of so many inner causes and conditions. I mean, it's amazing, really, what the body does and how it functions, but it also has a great fragility, you know, like a water bubble. You know, our lifespan, our body, our life, everything has this fragility, and especially when we see it in the sense of, in light of these like major catastrophes that are going in the world, you know, war, famine, epidemic, diseases, we can see how fragile our body and lifespan really is in these cases, you know, and we don't know any time this can happen to us. Even more so what's going on in the world right now, this becomes more pertinent, these reflections, and I think they're even easier to do because we see so much of that in the world right now. I mean, I have one friend who was in retreat, some of you might know, but, you know, we just thought, well, she's in retreat, that's great, you know, and then all of a sudden we heard she passed away. She fell down in some way and had you know, and she died really quickly. She had this accident, and the way she fell in the room, she passed away like that. So it was completely shocking, you know, because we just thought, oh, well, she's in retreat, that's all great. And then next we heard she'd passed away, and she wasn't necessarily sick or ill. It was just, you know, she just fell in a certain way in her room and banged her head, and it was fatal. So just things like that can happen. I mean, maybe we know someone already. I mean, I know 2 or 3 examples like that. People that I thought, well, they're quite healthy, they're not going to die of that. I know another nun. We always thought she was really healthy, she was going to live a long life, and she did die in her early 60s. But again, it was for us, it was quite unexpected because we labelled her as a healthy person. You know, she had a very healthy, good lifestyle. And again, as we see in the example of COVID, you know, just some bacteria, what effect, a few germs, bacteria, how lethal they can be. You know, a bee sting, people who have allergies to them, you know, any kind of insect bites, any of these things can make huge, you know, all of a sudden we're well, and then something small like that happens and it can be the cause of your death, you know. So again, we try to really bring some of these examples to mind, especially with people that we know, you know, that these things, you know, something like that, they pass really suddenly in their life, and trying to think this, you know, this could happen to me at any moment. You know, there's so many causes and conditions around me that can cause that to happen. And so again, the conclusion is that we have to practice Dharma, not just tomorrow or next week, but, you know, now, you know, keep our mind in check now. You know, where is our mind? What are we doing with our mind? So I find this one quite powerful. It's not certain which will come first, tomorrow or the next life. So we could just sit and ruminate in that for a wee while. I mean, this is like, that's it really, you know. I mean, we might not feel it deeply, but it's pretty true, you know. There's not a lot of logic or reasoning there, but it's like slap bang in the face, you know, it's true. We really don't know. There's no guarantee. There's nothing we can sign. There's no insurance policy. There's no guarantee. You know, unless we have a level of clairvoyance, again, we all have kind of intuitions and feelings, but if we really check that, it's not clear that you know, I can't say I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning. I can't say with definiteness. We can't take out a health insurance policy, a life insurance policy that guarantees that we're not going to die tomorrow morning and that we're going to wake up. There's nothing like that we can rely on, you know, outside ourselves. We can't take an oath. We can't promise someone, you know, I'm definitely going to be here tomorrow. We actually, you know, we don't have the control or the ability to do that unless we reach certain levels of tantric practice. And maybe some of you have already. I don't know. I just know I can't do that right now. I don't have that ability. So even, you know, we can apply this to, it's very good to think like that, you know, like, okay, my birthday's coming up, you know, and we just kind of think, okay, next birthday will be this. But we could think, well, I don't know if I'll have next birthday. You know, next year I'm going on holiday with my partner. But yeah, next year, every time we have these kinds of certainties that we build up in our mind. So one really good way is just to remind ourselves, but we don't really know, you know. There's no certainty that that's going to happen. And use some of these reflections, you know, because my life's dwindling really quickly because there's so much uncertainty in this world right now, especially with the elements, because my body's fragile. There's so many things that could happen to it in the meantime, you know, so many outer causes of death, inner conditions for death. So nothing's really certain. And again, we try to do this not in a heavy way with ourselves, but just really trying to get that clarity. It's the best favor. You know, you talk about doing ourselves a favor. This is the best favor we can do with ourselves. Really, really be clean, clear, and honest with ourselves about death and its uncertainty. Not make blind assumptions that, yeah, I'm going to live next year, I'm going to do this. I mean, even myself, you know, I talked to Susie about we're going to Nepal and next year we're going to do the CPMT in Laudo. But yeah, of course, it doesn't mean that we don't plan, but then another part of your mind needs to be saying, but we don't know for sure, you know, we just don't know. And being really, you know, and then that part of your mind, that deeper and deeper that gets, it makes your mind more clear about just making each day and each moment useful. This meditation really, really does bring about that mindset. It kind of sifting away the sort of unrealistic expectations, attachments that sort of, you know, start to go into this life. I mean, you know, it's difficult, you know. So this is the one that really kind of clears that space in the mind, clears the unrealistic expectations, blind assumptions, um, makes our life momentarily useful because we know what we should be doing. Again, because we tend to have our life, we tend to feel like, you know, well, I've had my youth and then my adulthood, and then, you know, depending on where we are right now, and then I'm going to go into retirement, and then when I retire, I'm going to do this. So again, even Lama Zoparim, she would say, it's not that we don't plan our life, but we plan it with a certain lightness and levity. You know, so we'll still make plans, but we make it on the basis of we could still die at any moment, you know. If we do live long, that's great. We need to do this and that. But every moment, every second, we need to kind of chip away our delusions. At least live with a good heart. At least kind of start to, you know, be more compassionate, more kind, and as much as we can, chip away at this kind of wheelie, you know, this wheelie cyclic existence we're in, you know. So it's treading lightly with our plans and ideas, making them, but still the main plan is what's happening at the death time, you know, what's going to be our state of the mind at the time of death. How much Dharma have we really done this life to help us to bring us into our next life? You know, that's what this meditation highlights. And again, for me, for all your students of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, or those who know of Rinpoche, well, how did he I mean, Rinpoche taught years and years on this topic. This is one of his favourite topics. Not because it's Rinpoche's favourite, because it's one of the most important if one really starts to engage in the practice of Buddhism, you know, and wants to make some progress. We need to think about death, you know. So how did Rinpoche? He passed away completely suddenly. I mean, 1 minute Rinpoche was seeing Facebook, you know, on all the social media. Rinpoche's he was up in the mountains, in the Himalaya mountains, a place called Sum, and he was teaching. He looked radiant, he looked there, he looked present. Then next day, we get a message that Rinpoche came down for the moments and mountains and just passed away like that, very suddenly. You know, the breathing stopped really suddenly. It was all very, very fast and very sudden. So again, we could say Rinpoche was 78, but for me, it was still really sudden. It was still really difficult because, yeah, we didn't have the chance. You know, it was just, but again, that's, you know, many of the students say this is what Rinpoche taught for years. So he showed us that in his passing, that it can happen at any time, totally unexpectedly. And are we ready? You know, it's a big question. So we can't, you know, as we say in the light of all that death is indefinite, time is indefinite, that big one. We can't really just say, I'm going to, you know, it's hard to say. Doesn't mean, you know, even in the Bodhisattva's way of life, when you're practicing Bodhisattva, you still need to rest, you know. But we can't just chill out completely, you know, because we can't see, as it says here, you know. We don't know for sure I'm not going to die today or tomorrow or next morning. We're going to wake up and breathe the next morning. We don't know, you know, because we can't see, you know. So the thought that you're going to live for a long time continues. It can do even to the day of your death. As I mentioned in the example of that lady was passing, there was something still evading her, you know, she still wasn't there was something still difficult to look at. So again, if we look at it now, it makes us more brave, you know. I think it gives us a lot more courage, you know. Certainly it will at the death time because we're already prepared, you know. So, and it does, there'll be things that we regret, you know, if we don't think about death really in this way. It's timing, it being definite, that it's definitely going to happen and that the timing's indefinite, you know. Our life, as it says here, we would feel, if we don't think about that life is can snatch the rug out from under us, you know. We might feel like that if we don't do that contemplation. But if we do it and we're aware that it can happen anytime, so then if we go to the doctor and we get this diagnosis, you know, this is how I see this kind of level of meditating on death, the time being indefinite. It's even closer, you know, it's like the last one was, okay, with death is definite, we go to the doctor and the doctor says, you know, you might have a year to live. So we try and think about how our mind would be there. But this one is more like we go to the doctor and because of whatever's going on with us, they don't know when we're going to pass away. We've got a terminal illness and it could happen at any time. So that's a much more vulnerable and difficult position. But again, if we've done these reflections, then there's a sense of preparedness in our mind, you know. We're prepared for that. Unexpectedness, you know, that unpredictability. We've got a level, we might not be fully prepared like the great gurus, you know, but we've already thought about that whole scenario. We've got an idea yet. So we've already, and as we see when we go into the last module here about what practices to do at the death time, then we're going to see, like, if we're already doing them, then we have a level of preparation, because that's the whole point of this, is to think, okay, so how do I prepare, you know? So we're going to go into that. And again, as we go through all the modules, all of that is preparation for death, understanding our samsaric nature, chipping away at our delusions, you know, gradually getting to a deeper understanding of emptiness and the nature of mind. But it all really comes out of, and we get more energy, we spend more time if we think about these contemplations on death. We won't feel like life is, you know, the rug's been kind of snatched from under us, like, oh my God, I don't have the time, you know, I'm kind of, it's caught me unawares. We're going to be caught unawares, you know. It's much more skillful, much more intelligent to you know, to do that. We all want to do that. We want to be in control, but this is the way to be in control in terms of the Buddhist perspective, is to control your mind and having some level of control of our delusions, our mind during at the death time, during the death process. Because as we'll see, it's a really important time, you know, at the death time. Our state of mind very much influences our future rebirth. So we do need to have some level of being able to be there, present at the death time, you know, or an accumulation of goodness in our life, familiarity with that, so we're ready, you know, that'll hold us through the death process. So let's just take a moment to think right now. I mean, about people, you know, that's died unexpectedly. I shared a couple of people in my life, you know, so does anyone want to share someone who maybe died unexpectedly in their life, and maybe how did it influence them, or thinking about it now? If they thought about it more in their meditation, would that really kind of impact this meditation for them and make it more real? This sense of time is that death isn't definite. The time is indefinite.
Yes, Eleanor, go ahead.
Eleanor?
Can you hear me?
Yeah, hold on. Try again.
No.
We could hear you,
Hold
but
on.
it's very soft.
Eleanor, try again.
Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I think the biggest thing that happened to me in my life, a sudden death, was my mother. She was killed in a car crash when she was 60, you know, and that had a huge impact on my life at that time and the rest of the family. Yeah.
Had you met Buddhism at that time?
No, I had a different spiritual path at that time.
But you were still engaged in a spiritual path, yeah.
I.
Mhm.
Hmm.
So do you think, I mean, I know these are quite difficult, but bringing that to mind, well, that definitely influences these meditations, you know, and it makes it more real, do you think?
Yeah, I think I'm pretty, I mean, I'm in my 80s, so my lifespan is slowly diminishing, you know, but
That's true. Quite a few of us are older here, so it definitely becomes more in your
yeah,
face, yeah?
yeah. But it's something that I do think about and I prepare, and it helps me prepare in a physical way as well as a spiritual way,
Mhm.
like, you know, giving away stuff and preparing and all those sorts of things. Yeah, which my mother didn't have the opportunity to do.
Yeah.
You know, so it left it left chaos in lots of ways.
Mhm.
Yeah, family chaos.
Mhm. Yeah,
Mm.
that's a really good point, because if we don't think about this indefinite time, it can leave so much difficulty behind as well, you know,
Mm.
because you haven't prepared, you know, you haven't thought about it really, so you didn't think about it in that perspective as well. So just on a practical level for the family members, these type of meditations force us to prepare, as you say, practically and inwardly. So it's you know, it's also, that's a compassionate thing to do for your family as well, you know, and those around you.
Mm.
Stan, you
Mm.
had your hand up?
Yes, it's not a sudden death, but when I had caretaking with my wife, who died after a 9-year period of dealing with cancer, it was always my intention, my impression that 9 years is a long time. Maybe therapies will come on the horizon and her life will be extended and something will develop. And that's in a sense, a form of denial, but it's hopeful thinking, of course. And there were some things that helped, but I recall the specific time when I actually realized, oh, it's actually going to happen now. It's really now only a few days or a week at the most. And I remember feeling just shocked about it, even though I knew about it for 9 years and we worked with it for so long and had many
Yeah.
conversations, how shocking it felt to actually go, oh, it is really now. And this isn't even my death, it's the death of my loved one. And it makes me think about how one thinks they're kind of prepared to some degree. Maybe I wouldn't have been as shocked if it had happened more suddenly still, but I was surprised at how much of a shocking surprise it was to me when I did finally realize, oh, it is now. And so that strikes me as kind of germane to our conversation in that our goal is to do what we can to prepare ourselves. But I have the suspicion, at least in my case, that everything I do, there may very well still be a sense of shock that, oh, it is happening now. How shocking that is. And I take
Yeah.
that as inspiration to even work harder and figure out what
Yes.
more to do.
Yeah, it's not easy to I think your meditation on this topic has to be really, really deep, not to experience some level of shock, either with others or with yourself, But at least if we try a little bit to bring it into mind and a little bit prepare, it will help, And certainly for ourselves, because if we die on it, on a sort of, or we're given this kind of like very swift diagnosis. Well, if we've thought about it ahead of time and we've done more preparation, it won't be as difficult, right? It won't be as painful because we feel like, okay, I've done what I can, I've done my best, I've done these things. So you can see how it really, really helps, to motivate us and make our life more clear, keep our mind in virtue. That's the basic thing, So
Absolutely. Now I think back on it, my whole incentive was to try to help her survive as long as possible. And it was never, even though I always thought about death and I said nightly prayers, may our karma bring us together in the next lifetime and things like that, and say mantras, recite mantras, but I never really did meditations on her death, and which I am doing now since taking this and another class like this. And I think that is what's different for
yeah,
me.
great.
Yeah, right.
Joe, do you want to share?
I have a different perspective, if that's okay. A few slides back, when it said, have you ever woken up in the morning and somebody's there, and then at the end of the day, the bit. Well, so this is very different, and there is a huge, chunk of my life's experiences that precede this, but there's no time for saying it. But I see it as the being that is that has died every day. By they're there in the morning and they're not in the evening. Is part of myself. It's a bit more of the ego, dying. And hopefully at the end of the day, because I'm not the same person, from when I wake up to the end of the day, whether you call it Dharma or whatever, there's no difference between, I see no distinction between, let's say that, the Dharma, the reading or it's all one. So my focus now is on getting closer to that inner clarity, that wisdom, that clear mind, in Buddhist, using Buddhist terminology. So I don't focus on a physical death. So that's what I'm noticing, that I'm not the same. Part of me has died, but it's okay, because it's the bits that need to be cleared away. a bit more each day. So I don't know if that's relevant or welcome.
Well,
But
I mean, certainly that is the purpose of death and reflection meditation, is to kind of work on our stuff, you know, to motivate us to work on our stuff. That's the real big thing, you know, and it's just, did someone else want to say something, Bae? Someone else speak? No? So anyway, I guess, I don't know if it's the complete way, you know, here of thinking about death. I mean, certainly when you get into the teachings on emptiness, the topic on emptiness, the module there, we do start to even question how we, you know, we're questioning there how we exist, you know. What's the nature of self? It's not that we don't exist, but we have a certain existence that's beyond the view of ourself right now. So that maybe applies a little bit more there when we're questioning who we are and how we exist. Here it is more about using using our upcoming death as a motivator for practice and thinking about it really deeply. So in some level, that seems to be what you're doing anyway, you know, you're using these classes to motivate yourself and understand and deepen your Dharma practice, you know, work on your stuff. So yes. Okay, so let's just to finish this second root truth, the decision we make. So the decision we come to is that thinking about the indefinite time of our death is just, again, this inspiration, this clarity about practicing Dharma right this minute. You know, there's no time to waste kind of thing. There's no time to lose. So that's, and again, it's, even as you were saying, Joe, it's just every day, moment to moment, looking and starting to understand the nature of mind, consciousness, who we are, how we exist, if that's what you're doing, if that's what you're using, you know, your life to question that and receive teachings to get more clarity on the nature of mind, to deepen our, you know, our good-heartedness, to develop bodhicitta, then that's what we should be doing, you know, that's how we're supposed to bring about, this is the result of this meditation, you know, is to really focus and hone in on that as the purpose of your life. So again, as Lama Tsongkhapa is saying, after you reflected in this way, you will practice the teaching right now. That's what you think, without assuming that you will have a lot of time to live. And again, we just, again, as you're saying, just trying every morning, as we think, you know, do one of the reflections, if we can wake up in the morning and do one of those reflections out of the Lamrim book, and then just think, you know, every time, death is definite, time is indefinite, any of these reasons or logic, then as much as possible, dedicate a life to benefiting sentient beings, dedicate a life to understanding the nature of consciousness, dedicate a life to understanding death and rebirth and gradually overcoming it, you know, chipping away at the delusions. That's the best outcome we can have for those meditations, is to come to that conclusion. So just quickly to go over the last of the 9-point meditation. I do want to try and get into next week the death process, what happens during the death time. That's really juicy from the tantric, it's actually from the tantric teachings, but you know, because of the kindness of Lama Yeshe, Lama Zopa Rinpoche, you know, they get made available to us in the teachings on the death process. Even without having the High Yoga Tantra initiation, we can access that now and understand how we die. So that's kind of the nuts and bolts of what happens. So I want to move on to that next week, but to finish here with these sort of 9 reasonings or 9 logics that we apply for death being indefinite, time indefinite. And then the third one is that nothing except the Dharma can help at the time of death, you know. So that's another kind of understanding we come to after thinking about these 3 reasons. Because at the time of death, our friends are of no help. Because at the time of death, our wealth is of no help. Because at the time of the death, our body is no help. So the third decision is we have to try and practice Dharma. And even, Eloise, you sort of mentioned, you were saying this a little bit about your right now being 80, you know, Eleanor, about your trying to kind of get really clear with all your possessions, you know, what's going to happen to them, so we're not sort of clinging to them at the death time. So again, for those of us who are younger, maybe we think about that already, you know, our relationship with our possessions. This is what this meditation does, starts to try to clarify our relationship with our body, our wealth, and our friends in the light of, you know, nothing can help us at the time of death, and the time of death is uncertain. So the first one is, because at the time of death, our friends are of no help. So again, this one gets a wee bit closer again, you know, in terms of our sense of death being, it could be really close, you know, we just don't know. So imagine, as Joe in Halifax is saying, imagine lying on your deathbed. So this is the type of meditation we do for this truth, you know, this is one of the best ones to make it really clear in our mind, to make it really sink in. Imagine lying on our deathbed, growing weaker by moment by moment. So at that time, sorry, went off the wrong way there. So at that time, you know, like we're on our deathbed, we can see, you know, there's not a lot at that time that our friends can do, right? We have to go through that process on our own. So if we think about that meditation right now, we can imagine on our bed, our friends are there. I mean, you can make it as vivid and real as you want, you know, maybe they're crying, maybe they're upset, but it becomes very clear that they can't do a lot for us at that time. You know, the best thing actually they say at the death time is to really die on your own, because it's often that attachments can come up, sorrow can come up. But again, if you've done this kind of meditation and reflection already and visualized what's happening at the time of death, and again, in the light of maybe once we get to know the death process a wee bit more, so through familiarity with this type of thought and reasoning, we won't have clinging. We'll know this is the time we need to leave, you know, and there won't be any attachment. And we'll also have done some practice to sort of prepare our mind. So we need to go much more inward at that time. We have to focus on what's going on in here. We have to work with this process because our consciousness is now moving out of this life and into another life, you know. So this, again, this deathbed meditation really brings to light what, you know, that they can't help us at the death time. So we shouldn't get too attached right now, you know. Again, it doesn't mean we don't love and care and enjoy our friends, but we have to be careful with the sort of mindy attachment with friends, you know, because if death can happen at any time, we could be facing this process at any time. So we need to make sure we have this light mind, you know, we don't have this clingy mind. Because it's the mindy attachment and unease that can muck up our death process. It can muck up what happens at the time of death, you know, when we can't let go. So again, this type of meditation can be super, super helpful. And also in terms of like when we have stuff with people this life, you know, friends, and it goes wrong or they disappoint us, it's like, well, we can just think about that meditation, you know, at the time of death, what's it going to be like? You know, what's the point in getting upset about it now? So again, we'll talk a little bit more as we get onto the death process about these things like friends, possessions, how we kind of look them as we relate to them as we kind of go into the death process and what happens there and what we need to think and do more as we're really going into that process. But for now, it's just good to kind of, you know, kind of like maybe practice holding that visualization, you know. And again, it kind of cuts through a lot of your stuff this life, you know, with friends. If you think, well, if I was going to die today, I mean, I can't take them anyway, you know. Same with wealth, you know. Sometimes we get attached to wealth, we get disappointed when things doesn't work out with money or business. But again, doing this meditation, it just cuts through all that. Because none of that anyway we can take at the death time, and we are going to face that sooner or later, you know. So it's kind of can really help to just let go and shave off all these attachments when you do this kind of more intense style of meditation. Especially, you know, in Tibet, you know, there was all these charnel grounds, you know, that meditators would go meditate in, because these were places where, you know, bodies were offered up. That's how a lot of people were, you know, when they passed away, they were offered up to the the vultures and everything, you know, so that there were these places you could go on, and the meditators would go there and perform certain practices, meditate on death, meditate on at their time of death, meditate on their own body being chopped up at the death time. And so it helped you to kind of release. There's a practice called chu. Chu, and it means cutting in Tibetan, cutting through. And so the idea is when you do that practice, you're trying to cut through, certainly at this level, your attachment. At another level, you're cutting through your wrong view of self, you know, trying to cut through your ignorance that grasps at a wrong view of self. So that's the kind of ultimate goal of this Chu practice. But it was practiced very much in cemeteries and charnel grounds. And because first of all, it brings death to light, you know, like the grasping that we have at our body, you know, again, you know, when you go there, it reminds you of death, you know. Everybody else has passed away and that's going to happen to me. So it helps you to release this kind of attachment that we have to our body. And they also use it to help to realize the nature of mind, because once you've kind of sifted through attachment, then it's easier to get to the nature of mind, because that's kind of attachment's like the big blanket that lies on the mind, and it stops us from getting to the kind of subtleties of the nature of the mind. So that's the first blanket we need to take off, and that's what we're dealing with these death and impermanence meditations, you know, is trying to lift that up, so then we can get to the juicy parts of emptiness and bodhicitta, you know. But it's very hard to reach there in our mind and our practice with this kind of heavier blanket anger and attachment on the mind, you know. So this kind of meditation kind of really helps to lift up the kind of see, you know, highlight the attachment to the body. Ladan, you raised your hand. Did I see that? Yes, Ladan?
Yes, I have a question about you was talking about chord. Is it chord?
CHOD.
Is it
Chu.
the same that the nun of Shaolin this weekend was at Maitripa College?
Yes,
Is
that's
it the
right.
same?
Yeah, there was a group of nuns. I listened to it as well. There was a group of
Yeah.
nuns.
Yeah.
Did anyone else listen?
Yes. Yes.
Eleanor? Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Everybody always likes to hear about this practice of Chu, you know, it's very esoteric, you know, but it really cuts to the heart of your delusions,
Is,
you know.
is
Yeah.
is it the same that you can how do you say that, like you begin with a traumatic event or something that makes you really frightened and you cut through it, like cutting through the delusion, but after that, like you I know one of the Lama, the woman, the name is the name
Sultram
come back to
Alioni.
me. Yeah.
Sultram Alioni, yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So she's a great practitioner of the Chu practice.
Sure. And
So
she changed the like your demon, changing your demon to the feeding your demon or
feeding
something.
your
I
demons,
have
yeah,
the book,
yeah.
and it's all the same.
Yeah,
Like
no, it's the same
shut-
practice. It's exactly the same practice. The main purpose of the practice, and people practice it. I mean, of course, people, you know, the extreme way that for those higher level practitioners, you go into cemeteries, you go into scary places.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, like at dark in the night
Exactly.
on your own, you know, if you're a very high level practitioner, so you go to a scary place because the idea is fear comes up.
It comes up. Yeah.
So when you use that fear to recognize the wrong view of self and through using the meditations in Chu, you cut through that wrong view of self. So the place becomes like the cemetery, you know, the scary place. It brings up the wrong view of self, and then you meditate through the practice on emptiness to cut through that wrong view of self, because it's true, the sense of I comes up really strongly when you're afraid
Exactly.
or when somebody you could do it when somebody criticizes, you know. Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say that. Do the Chu when somebody criticizes you, look at your eye, and then use some logic and reason or whatever practice you do in the emptiness to you know, refute the I, you know. It's the wrong sense of I, you know, break it down, because that's the way that you get to see what we call the object to refuted, you know, who's the wrong view of self. So Chu is one of these practices that is used to to realize emptiness, you know. But first of all, you need to recognize through using fear, where is this I? Where it's really deep seated, you know. When it comes up, it's like, wow, it's really strong, you know, when you're in a fearful situation. So it is that practice, yeah. And as I say, this is, and again, what you do in that practice is you visualize cutting up your body. You're in a scary place, then you cut up your body and you offer it to all the spirits. You offer it to all those spirits and the deities. And in that place, it's like, again, you're cutting through your concepts, you know, when you don't actually cut up your body, but you try and really visualize this cutting up of the body and using your wisdom to cut it up and offering it. And again, it's chipping away, these meditations chip away at the wrong view self, you know.
Yeah. And sometimes when you do shamatha in not really like I don't think I am I have realization or something, but sometimes in shamatha, when you have already something in your mind and you try to do shamatha, sometimes you see something that is scary, like it's come up without you being a great meditator. So chud may be helpful in that time. Chud
It can
and
also cut
emptiness.
through your inner demons. Yeah, yeah. You can use it to cut through you. I mean, you can use it to cut through any kind of delusion, you know, really. Chud means cutting. So anything really, chud can be applied because it's the thing is you're just cutting through whatever wrong appearances come to the mind, what any exterior, because everything basically is an appearance of your mind, you know, when it boils down to it. So we have internal and external scary appearances, right? So you can use that, you know, the practice of chud to cut through, you know, your understanding of emptiness, the way the practice is laid out to cut through that demon, that inner demon, yeah. So anything, it can be applied to anything, yeah. I mean, Lojong is all about that. It's a type of Lojong. It's really a type of mind training your mind in a way that cuts through. Really sharp weapons are all these mind training techniques and methods. Everything's to do with reducing the delusions, eliminating the delusions. And Chud's just another example of that, but it's kind of very, almost like shamanistic, esoteric, you know, because you go to
Yeah,
these
very
very
old.
channel grounds and allow all the fears to come up there, all the demons to come up there. So again, just as Togmi Sampo's saying, you know, loved ones, where are we now? Oh yeah, we only have a couple of minutes, so we'll just finish off here, maybe with this quote. So again, what can really help? I mean, again, really getting into this sense of, you know, the kind of uncertainty of death, you know, what really helps us, what can really help us. Loved ones we've long kept company will part, wealth that we've created will be difficult, you know, will all be left. Consciousness, the guest house, will even leave the body. So the practice of a bodhisattva, you know, this is from the incredible text by Togmi Sampo. It was a great bodhisattva, very like St. Francis of Assisi, very ascetic, incredibly, you know, great bodhicitta for all sentient beings. I know, I think at one point he had, he almost died 2 or 3 times giving his body to lice. Because at that time in Tibet, you know, like you wouldn't wash for long periods of time, so you would have lice in your clothes. But he would purposely, you know, and normally people who would lice would take them out and then they might die, you know, when they don't have a place to live. But he would purposely put lice in his sheepskin and inside so that they could live from him and eat off of him, you know. That's how much he sacrificed and gave up his body. So he was this, we're not asking, most of us aren't at that level yet, so don't worry, we can rejoice, you know. But it's like the stories of Lama Zopa Rinpoche, he would go to places, there was a few times when students were with him, and they were in places in India where at night time, you know, many mosquitoes, so usually we'd have the mosquito net over your bed. And so Venerable Roger, his attendant for almost 40 years, at least one time, and a couple of other students was with Rinpoche when, you know, he happened to be sharing a room with Rinpoche because I think they were in a situation where there wasn't any other rooms, you know, so he had to sleep with Rinpoche. And he was like trying to go off to sleep. He was feeling a bit uncomfortable because Rinpoche doesn't sleep, you know. And so anyway, he started to go off to sleep. And then at some point he woke up and Rinpoche had taken the mosquito. They were in India. Rinpoche had taken the mosquito net off his bed and he had opened his back up, and all the mosquitoes, there was hundreds of mosquitoes on his back. And that was how, and Rinpoche did that a few times, you know, offering his blood to the mosquitoes. So, and that was Roger and 2 or 3 other students saw Rinpoche do that on certain occasions, you know. So this is kind of like the high-level bodhisattvas who have done these meditations on really abandoning any attachment to the body, to the point where they're happy to give their body up. Even the time at the Buddha, you know, in his life before he came into this world, he was a great bodhisattva who fed his body to the tigress. A few people may be familiar with that story. But he gave up in his previous life before he came to this world to be a Buddha. He was in a place in Nepal and saw a starving tigress, and he gave up his life to his body to feed the cubs, you know, so the mother could feed. So he fed his body to the mother, and then she could feed the babies, because he couldn't bear that the babies were going to die, you know, and the mother was very sick, you know, so she wasn't able to go and find food. But again, these are beings who have already had quite high realizations, you know. So we're in training for that. And one of the best trainings is meditation on death and impermanence, because it starts to release our attachments to wealth, body, you know, these things that are not really, we think they're serving us, but they're not certain, you know, they're uncertain, they're unpredictable, and we can't take them at the death time anyway, you know. So what we're going to find out next week through going through the death process is, well, what happens there, and what do we take with us, right? So, and how that happens. It's a really, I think some of you might have heard the teachings already, but it's something we have to go through again and again anyway to get more clarity on what's going on at that time, especially beyond, you know, when the breathe, you know, when we're really going inward and we have to dissolve the elements and then go through these subtle levels of consciousness, what goes on there. It's really interesting. It's very fascinating. So if you have time next week to read over, again, just keep doing the meditations in the Lamrim book, reading over Venerable Sangye Kadrel's book. There is teachings in there in the death process. There's also teachings on the death process in Rinpoche's book, How to Enjoy Death. And you can find a lot of teachings online as well. There's I did send out the reading list, so there's quite a lot of options there to look up. But the thing is, with the death process, it's good to hear it again, because it is something we want to gain familiarity with, see what we can do at the death time, how much of that can we aware of when we go through the death process. Okay, let's just do a final, let's just take a moment to dedicate, so we're on time. And so whatever, let's take a moment just to think about what maybe struck your mind the most in this class that you can want to take with you and contemplate in the next few days moving forward. Let's clarify that in your own mind. And at least making a determination in our mind. You know, we need to start with the motivation, the determination to think as much as we can more and more about death, you know, the death process, how it's, you know, definite in our life. The time of death is indefinite. So how important it is to really embrace this more and more deeply in our practice. Because in that light, our practice becomes more powerful, you know, we have less attachment to this life. We have more clarity on the purpose of life. It just makes our life more meaningful, and we won't die. The main thing is, you know, in the light of these reflections, we won't die with regrets. You know, we'll feel like, according to our capacity and ability, we've used our life in the most meaningful way. I think that's the key thing, you know. We don't want to die with that feeling, you know. We want to die with a sense of accomplishment, whatever it is, you know, however much we've able to accomplish, and feel happy about that, die in peace with that. And we dedicate all the merits of this dedication, of this class, for all sentient beings, not just ourselves. So due to these merits and the merits of all, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to include all the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas and all sentient beings. So we make our dedication as expansive as possible for all sentient beings to be able to meet the teachings to be able to understand, reflect, and meditate on the teachings, to be able to find a joy in the teachings. The joy is the biggest thing that keeps us going in our practice. You know, when we really enjoy something, it's easy to keep going. And to be able to really find an end to birth and death, and to develop all these incredible qualities on the Bodhisattva path up to enlightenment. May we wish this for ourselves and all sentient beings. Okay, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you. Thank
And
you.
we have
Thank
two
you,
more classes.
Venerable Angie. Thank
Thank
you, everyone.
you.
Thank you, Babe.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank
Venerable.
you. Have a good week.
And you
Thank
too.
you.
You too.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Good
Bye.
night.
Bye.